Russia wants you to think that it has sustained nearly 4 years of attritional warfare against Ukraine all on its own. That's vital to the narrative that the Kremlin wants to spin, which Russia is an unstoppable military juggernaut that has endless supplies of missiles and artillery it can use to batter anybody who stands against it. That narrative is a lie. Russia has only gotten so far because it's relying on its allies, with North Korea among the most important of them. And now one of those key arteries that connects Russia to North Korea has been severed. Nowhere in Russia is safe, as Ukraine just proved by sending a message 6,600 kilometers or around 4,100 miles away. The news of Ukraine's latest long-range strike against Russia broke on November 14th. United 24 media said that a powerful explosion had rocked Russia's famous Trans-Siberian railway line somewhere near the settlement of Sosnovka, which is in Russia's Khabarovsk Krai. That region is over 4,000 miles away from Ukraine, meaning that even the country's best long-range drones and missiles would never have been able to make it. Something else must have happened, and that something appears to have been a brilliant sabotage operation conducted in conjunction with Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, or HUR. The explosion certainly had an impact. United 24 media adds that Ukraine managed to derail a freight train on the Trans-Siberian line. At the very least, that causes a massive delay to whatever was being transported. However, the explosion was also powerful enough to completely halt cargo traffic on the line, albeit temporarily, creating a logjam that prevented cargo from reaching its destinations on time. That doesn't really matter, you might think. A delayed train doesn't make much of a difference. Maybe not to people who have to wait around for a few extra minutes when a commuter train fails to pull into a station on time. But the cargo trains that run back and forth on the Trans-Siberian Railway are vital to Russia. Not least because many of those trains carry something that is vital to Vladimir Putin's Ukraine war effort: weapons from North Korea. HUR took to Telegram to explain what it had carried out on November 13th and why it matters so much to Ukraine. On November 13th, an explosion occurred near the populated town of Sosnovka in the Khabarovsk territory of the Russian Federation, blocking the movement of goods along the Trans-Siberian Railway, a key railway artery of the aggressor state of the Russian Federation, which is used to supply weapons and ammunition, in particular those obtained from the territory of the DPRK, HUR said in its statement. It then took a shot at Russia's complete inability to defend itself, adding, "The Kremlin's special services once again demonstrate their inability to ensure effective control over even the most critical infrastructure facilities for the occupiers." In other words, Ukraine is telling Putin that these types of strikes shouldn't be possible for Ukraine to pull off. Russia is a mighty military nation after all. It should have everything it needs to defend one of its most vital logistical arteries, but it doesn't. And Ukraine just exposed that fact. We don't know a whole lot more about the operation beyond that, as HUR has only revealed that the operation happened and that there is some footage of the preparation that went into it. Shared on YouTube by Euromaidan Press, the 50-second video that accompanied HUR's Telegram announcement doesn't show much beyond highlighting the sheer scale of the Trans-Siberian Railway and revealing that Ukraine had eyes on it for a while. We also get brief clips of explosives stuck to the line's tracks, which explains how Ukraine's HUR operatives pulled off the attack. All its people had to do was find an unguarded piece of line and strike. Now Russia is dealing with a derailed train and the knowledge that Ukraine has operatives deeper inside Russian territory than Putin and his cronies could have ever expected. And Ukraine isn't going to let them forget it. HUR capped off its Telegram post with a warning directed at Russia's leader. The work to dismantle the enemy's logistical capabilities continues. In other words, what happened on November 13th is far from the last time that Russia can expect to see Ukraine's saboteurs at work. It will happen again and again until Russia's entire logistical network is in complete disarray. Proclamation proved to be prophetic, or HUR may have known something that the rest of the world didn't, as Ukraine followed up its Trans-Siberian strike with another attack on Russian rail just a couple of days later. On November 16th, the Kyiv Independent reported that the pro-Ukrainian partisan group Artesh had struck again. Operating in the occupied parts of the Ukrainian Zaporizhia region, Artesh managed to set fire to a relay cabinet at a railway in the region's Melitopol district, which is just 50 kilometers or 31 miles away from the front lines. This is a tale of two attacks. Ukraine hit Russia deep into its territory first, then followed up with an attack on Russian rail inside the occupied portions of Ukraine, and it took only 2 days for HUR's warning to become reality. The message is loud and clear: nowhere is safe from Ukraine's saboteurs. Artesh managed to achieve the same thing as the Trans-Siberian Railway operatives by stopping some of Russia's military trains in their tracks. That's the entire point. And though HUR might make it sound like this is an operation that is just beginning, Ukraine has been zeroing in on Russian rail for several months now. In fact, October 21st saw an explosion rock a key railway link in the Leningrad region of Russia. That explosion caused damage to tracks and caused a fire that engulfed a freight train the United 24 media says was carrying military cargo. Russia claimed technical disruptions, but it was clear the country had just fallen victim to another Ukrainian rail sabotage operation. Between that attack and Ukraine's strike on the Trans-Siberian Railway, Ukrainian partisans struck again. Putin must have felt like he had been betrayed from within as sabotage groups operating throughout Russia and the occupied territories launched a series of attacks that took out a host of valuable Russian locomotives. We covered how these attacks are helping to cripple the Kremlin's war machine in a video, so check that out if you want to learn more. The point we're making is that the Trans-Siberian Railway strike wasn't isolated. It wasn't even the culmination of a series of strikes. Instead, it's part of a pattern, a strategy that is becoming clearer by the week as Ukraine's partisans and HUR operatives hit Russian rail again and again. Every single time, Ukraine takes out trains or lines that are vital to Russia's war effort, especially when it comes to getting equipment and weapons to the front lines. The Trans-Siberian Railway strike may just be the biggest of the bunch because of its association with North Korean weapons. But we'll get to that point in a moment. First, let's take a closer look at what Ukraine just hit. The Trans-Siberian Railway is a marvel of Russian engineering, and it should come as no surprise that it's also become somewhat symbolic for Russia and its war machine. Stretching for 9,288 kilometers or 5,771 miles, it's the single largest railway line in the world, and it's proven itself vital for connecting Siberia to mainland Russia. The single railway line has been critical to the success of the former Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. Putin is counting on it to transport millions of tons of cargo, both military and civilian, across Russia as he wages his war in Ukraine. Russia knows how important this single logistical artery is to everything that it does. You could even call the Trans-Siberian Railway the aorta of Russia because almost nothing works, at least in terms of Russia's long-distance logistics, when that line is taken out of commission. It's been around since 1916, the Moscow Times said in a 2013 article. That same article also shed some light on how important the railway is to Russia. At the time, the Trans-Siberian Railway was capable of handling 120 million tons of freight annually. It's tough to put a dollar figure on that enormous volume of cargo, though it will clearly be in the billions. Much of the cargo involves items that keep money flowing into Russia, Railway Pro said in 2020. These include ferrous metals, oil and oil-related products, and iron ore. And since Putin launched his invasion, weapons. This single line is so important that 2013 saw the announcement that Russia would unseal its National Welfare Fund to the tune of $13.6 billion to fund the modernization of the Trans-Siberian Railway, along with several other projects. A direct rail link across Eurasia will become the main transportation artery between Europe and the Asia-Pacific region, Putin said at the time. This will give a powerful boost to development for Siberia and the Far East. He wasn't wrong. That's what the Trans-Siberian Railway has always been. The modernization of the line has been ongoing ever since, as Maria Kaziva and Ekaterina Bondarchuk revealed in a joint paper created for the 2020 Northern Sustainable Development Forum. They revealed that Russia expected its modernization work to enable the Trans-Siberian Railway to transport over 200 million tons of cargo annually by 2025. Though it's unclear if Russia has managed to hit that target due to the Ukraine war pulling focus away from this massive infrastructural project. One thing is for sure, Ukraine hitting a portion of this railway is the last thing that Putin needs when trying to complete his invasion of the country. The delays alone could have cost Russia millions of dollars, assuming that the trains that Ukraine stopped were carrying consumer cargo. But that's not what the freight train that HUR derailed was carrying. HUR itself revealed that Ukraine carried out this attack for one major reason: stopping the flow of North Korean weapons to the front lines in Ukraine. And that flow has been a major problem for Ukraine ever since Putin invaded. Russia and North Korea have been allies for years, but they made the military aspect of that alliance official only a year and a half ago. In June, the two countries signed a mutual defense pact that included a clause for each to come to the other's aid should they ever face attacks on their own territory. Think of it as something akin to NATO's Article 5, only timed by Putin to allow him to claim legitimate acceptance of North Korean military aid should Ukraine ever strike on Russian territory. A couple of months later, Ukraine launched a counter-invasion into Russia's Kursk region. And that was all the excuse Putin needed to go calling on North Korea to deliver around 10,000 troops to expel the Ukrainian forces. Though Putin might try to act like Russia has only been working with North Korea since this pact was put into place, the reality is far different. Almost since the beginning of the Ukraine invasion, and especially once it became clear that Putin's war wasn't going to be the walk in the park that he had assumed, North Korea has been supplying Russia with weapons. The Guardian published an expose in April 2025. It said that North Korea's role in Russia's war against Ukraine came into sharp focus after it was revealed that a missile made in North Korea had killed 12 people in Kyiv. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky dropped the bombshell, stating, "According to preliminary information, the Russians used a ballistic missile manufactured in North Korea. If the information that this missile was made in North Korea is confirmed, this will be further proof of the criminal nature of the alliance between Russia and Pyongyang." But that statement was just a hint at the extent of the collusion between Russia and North Korea in Ukraine. The Guardian goes on to point out that North Korea had supplied Russia with at least 148 of its KN-23 and KN-24 ballistic missiles by the start of 2025, and there have likely been many more transferred since. There are also artillery shells, millions of them, according to a joint investigation carried out by Reuters and the Open Source Center. Together, those organizations tracked 64 shipments from North Korea to Russia over a 20-month period, which amounted to 16,000 containers, all believed to be carrying artillery shells for use in Ukraine. The same report also highlights that Ukraine believes that North Korea provides around 50% of the shells that Russia uses in Ukraine, and that the number may even be as high as 70%. Reuters adds that there are entire Russian artillery units that are wholly reliant on shells that Russia is getting from North Korea. Speaking to The Guardian, the former coordinator of a panel of UN experts that oversaw sanctions placed against North Korea highlighted how important the country has been to Putin's war effort. North Korea's contribution has been strategically vital, Hugh Griffiths told The Guardian. Without Chairman Kim Jong-un's support, President Vladimir Putin wouldn't really be able to prosecute his war in Ukraine. No wonder Ukraine wants to take out the Trans-Siberian Railway. If that line is being used to transport North Korean shells and missiles through Russia, it's as vital to Putin's war effort as North Korea itself. Russia's president certainly seems to understand how vital his once isolated ally has become. On October 29th, United 24 media reported on a new road bridge that Russia is building. The bridge will cross the Tumen River, linking North Korea to Russia and providing the latter with another route through which it can receive North Korean weapons. The bridge is the first automobile link between the two countries, and it's expected to be able to process 300 vehicles per day, around two-thirds of which are anticipated to be cargo trucks. United 24 media adds that there is potential to scale the bridge and its associated checkpoint so they can process up to 800 vehicles daily, which would allow tons of North Korean military hardware to bypass third countries and enter Russia directly. Putin will see this as a smart move, especially now that he knows that Ukraine can hit the Trans-Siberian Railway. In reality, this bridge is yet another indicator that Russia now needs North Korea far more than North Korea needs Russia. That wasn't the case before the Ukraine war. Back in June 2018, a little under 4 years before Putin launched his invasion, the NATO association said that Russia might be North Korea's final lifeline. It highlighted how Russia's relationship with North Korea could be traced back to the Soviet civil administration created in the wake of World War II. Putin solidifying his grip on the Russian presidency only strengthened that relationship. At the time, it was believed that North Korea's greatest asset, at least in terms of the things that Russia could exploit, was labor. The country could also serve as a buffer that would allow Putin to keep an eye on the rising US influence in East Asia. In other words, North Korea was a useful proxy, a country for Putin to use as he saw fit, all under the auspices of Russia serving as North Korea's only ally. But then the Ukraine war happened, and Putin's position of power has crumbled to the point where North Korea now holds most of the cards in its relationship with Russia. Oleg Ignatov, who is the senior Russia analyst for Crisis Group, outlined the reasons why when speaking to Al Jazeera in July. North Korea is now a more important ally for Russia than Iran or China, Ignatov said. North Korea supplies Russia with ammunition and some types of heavy weapons. As for the North Korean soldiers, Russian sources say they are professional and disciplined. At the beginning of the Kursk operation, they lacked modern combat skills required for this type of war, which involves the use of large numbers of drones, but they quickly adapted. Once upon a time, North Korea needed Russia, so it wouldn't be completely isolated from the international community. Now, Putin needs North Korea to keep his war going. That means anything that Ukraine can do to stop the flow of North Korean weapons into Russia, such as derailing a train on the Trans-Siberian Railway, is a good thing. If nothing else, that derailment means that North Korean weapons will take longer to get to the front lines, which weakens Russia's assaults and may create opportunities for Ukrainian counterattacks. After all, Russia's artillery units can't sustain fire on choke points if they don't have the North Korean shells they've been using for the last few years. If Ukraine maintains this sort of North Korea-centric strategy, it may not be long before the wellspring of support that Putin has enjoyed starts to dry up. Why? There are two reasons. First, as the Defense Post revealed in September, the relationship between Russia and North Korea is startlingly one-sided. It claims that a report commissioned by the Korea office of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom discovered that Russia has received $9.8 billion of arms from North Korea, but has only paid $1.2 billion for those weapons. North Korea may have been allowing this pay disparity to exist for so long because it still sees Russia as a useful ally. However, that perception may not last due to the second reason why North Korea's weapons could soon dry up: it's running out. In a November 16th piece, Defense Express revealed that there has been a dramatic decline in shipments from North Korea to Russia. None were recorded at all in September, and October only saw a handful of deliveries occur. The reason is that North Korea's reserves of usable Soviet-caliber shells are running on empty. Add these stockpile issues to the fact that around 50% of North Korea's shells don't even make it into Ukraine because they're so unreliable that they can't be used, and you end up with a military partnership that is on the rocks. North Korea has weakened itself significantly to keep Russia's war going. Now that Ukraine is destroying the railways and trains being used to transport the country's dwindling shells around Russia, North Korea will be wondering how much longer it can sustain all of this. Russia isn't paying what it should, it's losing or rejecting shells, and North Korea now finds itself in a position where it has more leverage over Putin than ever before. This isn't to say that the relationship between Russia and North Korea will collapse. However, the more pressure that Ukraine can place on that relationship, the more likely it is that North Korea asks for more than the great deal that Putin is enjoying right now. If that happens, Putin won't just lament the loss of a train full of North Korea's weapons. He might find himself spending billions of dollars more just to get his hands on those weapons in the first place. Putin can't afford that, especially due to the war he started placing such a heavy burden on Russia's finances. The war machine that Russia's president created is bleeding the country dry, and its economy is in freefall. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more videos covering Ukraine's daring strikes from deep inside Russian territory. And thanks for watching.